Kill the goddamn music. All right, UMG has a gun in my back. 4 years ago, I started making non-family friendly tech content, and the Wolverine controllers were some of the first I covered, and they laid the foundation for my current, whatever it is I do now. Today we have, I think, the 6th or 7th generation of Razer's Xbox Pro controllers with the Wolverine V3 Pro. There's also a new tournament edition for the first time in like 7 years. The V3 Pro's been updated with wireless connectivity, a 1000 Hz polling rate for the wired connection on PC specifically, a long-awaited new 4 rear button layout that I'm way too excited about, as well as the 2 front inputs that Razer is known for. Clicky switches are littered throughout the device just like the previous V2 models and make for one hell of an experience. To top it all off, Razer's one of the very first multi-quadrillion dollar mainstream, controller companies to use anti-stick drift Hall effect sticks in their Pro controllers, making this the anti-stick drift mechanical Xbox controller. I shit you not, mine came with stick drift. So did many other people's V3 Pros. This was a firmware issue. We'll talk about it later. It's fixable. Now, I would like to preface this because this is a very large company that has sent me a controller, and I'm still just as brutal with this as I am with everything else. I cuss, I tear the controller down. I'm kind of mean to it. I'm not trying to be a dick. In fact, I really like this controller. I just kind of have to make my reviews impenetrable.
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
Literally everything you're looking for is timestamped below. There's a lot to cover. To start, Razer did not send me the V3 Tournament Edition alongside the V3 Pro, and I think I know why. Both the spec sheet for the TE and the Pro model are identical, but their prices are not. The only real significance is the wireless, which is basically what you're paying the $100 premium for, but there's also the RGB, the rubber grip, and the carrying case. All of this isn't really available to the TE, but the $100 price difference. Is the wireless really that fucking important? The Tournament Edition sounds like a damn good deal.
How about you bitch? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I won't say anything further about the Tournament Edition for now because I don't have it in hand and I haven't tested it and this, that, and the other, so we're just focusing on the Pro model for today, which arrives at your door stuffed inside a nice fabric case with some Medusa stickers. Inside the case, there's the 2.4 gigahertz dongle and the 10-foot braided USB-C cable, but I personally wouldn't store it there. The cable will constantly assault the thumbsticks. There's also 2 swappable thumbsticks, a chodish dome one and a tall concave one. And an interesting note is the thumbsticks on the Wolverines for the first time sport OEM Xbox controller designs with a plastic base instead of a metal one that is also slimmer. So A, we get more range of motion, and B, control freaks for the first time will fit without issue, specifically the Xbox variants. Have fun swapping them out, they are a horror. There is this little arrow that you could use as a guide, but the gloss black finish makes it difficult to see in anything but perfect light. Have fun. Anyways, that's not really that important. That's more so a nitpick. I was more so worried about the Hall effect sticks themselves because the last time Razer made a controller, the V2 and the V2 Chroma and the V2 Pro, they all kind of felt
gross. Ew.
And now they got these nice, fancy Hall effect sticks. They're one of the first big companies to use them. And somehow all these years, they really just cannot figure this shit out. First off, and this has nothing to do with the performance digitally, I just thought some of you would be interested. According to my measurements, these are really high tension K-Silver sticks at 70 grams, which is the highest I've ever seen. The resolution, according to my measurements, which I'm retarded, so take it with a grain of salt, check the pinned comment, I might have a correction, but according to my measurements, it's like 150. The stick should still feel good with this level of tension, and the resolution is adequate, so those cannot be the reason that these thumbsticks feel like dog food. It could be the slightly laggy response time, check this timestamp for that, but this is something that we see on other controllers too. Their thumbsticks regularly have a much higher response time than the button presses, so it's the outer dead zone. It is legally drunk. It actually looks cross-eyed when you put both the graphs next to each other. And those are the outer dead zones. The inner dead zones, those were fun too. Those came with the premium factory calibrated stick drift I was talking about. This wasn't traditional stick drift that comes from the loss of tension from the spring or damage to the sensors or physical damage to the mechanisms. This was just a calibration issue on Razer's part, which they have released an update for. By the way, if you are on Xbox and you're using the Xbox software to customize your controller and you just have that, have fun. The update is only available on Windows PCs. Yet again, Fuck console players. I didn't say that. They did. They also didn't even fix the Deadzone issues when they dropped the firmware update. The Deadzone issues are still there. But I will commend Razer on going out of their way to fix at least something. The Razer Tartarus that's still on my wall has a software bug that hasn't been fixed to this day. And while it did take them quite some time, they did finally address something people have been complaining about for like 7 presidential elections, and that has been the 4 rear buttons. Razer finally fucked off with the Wolverine Ultimate 4-button layout and gave us 4 usable rear buttons with a new design and brand new switches that were previously used in the Viper V3 mouse. So they are not new switches, but they are much better than the old ones. I was the only person who liked the old button layout. I understood exactly why everybody else hated it. It made 0 sense. But now Razer currently has what is my all-time favorite button layout. There are 4 rear buttons that are kind of close in proximity, which will be an issue for some, but the buttons are nice and sizable and they protrude quite a bit from the rear plate, so they're very easy to use and they beat the hell out of what came before it. Plus the Kale micro switches and the simplicity of the placement, the combination's amazing. The other 2 spare inputs are on the front for the tryhards who simply cannot enjoy life. I'm an asshole today. Stick around. These buttons are called M1 and M2, and they have been a staple of Razer controllers for like a decade. There has been a small update. They are still tactile, but they use the same switches that the bumpers used. This is different from controllers like the V2 Chroma and V2 Pro, which used yellow Kale switches for these 2 extra front inputs. These were likely added to counter all the reliability issues with the older, more clicky Kale switches, but the new ones still give you a very tactile and short press. I've said it before, the placement of these buttons is absolutely perfect, and it is incredibly valuable in some games, but do keep in mind, you do have to take your finger, if you're just using one, off the bumper or trigger when you use it. Small trade-off. This is one of my favorite attributes of Razer controllers and was highly valuable to me when I first started using them. Above these spare buttons lie some of the world's most bitchin' bumpers ever. These have been a consistent win for Razer since the V2 Chroma, not the original V2, Jesus. And because they use the same switches as M1 and M2 now, they feel identical, they're very nice, but downside is they flex vertically quite a bit. Hopefully this doesn't come back and bite us in the ass like Razer's previous bumper-related fuck-ups. There's always some beta testing ass issue with these controllers. First V2 had bumper issues, the V2 Chroma had thumbstick issues on release, the V3 Pro had thumbstick issues on release. Like, actually hire fucking somebody. Don't ask me. Good news, everyone! Razer's second attempt at adjustable clicky triggers is absolutely smacking shit. I keep getting new controllers that keep beating the previous favorite for clicky triggers. I had like the Scuff Vision Pro and the Vader 4 Pro and a couple of other things, even the Easy SMX X20, which I have, like, I don't even have a script for that yet. Now this is actually the perfect blend of clicky and analog. It's much better than the V2 Pro, their previous attempt at clicky and analog mixture. This definitely has the shortest click and the most tactile feel. I love these. Fuck it, we ball with another sound test.
Bet.
The ABXY and D-pad are what they used to be. They're also incredibly formulaic. Kale switch ABXY, tack switch D-pad. Both feel and sound nice. The D-pad in particular has a very short press, very nice click. Downside is you can kind of very easily hit 2 inputs with it. It is nice though, and it consistently has like 100 to 110 grams of resistance for its presses, which is lower than other D-pads I've measured, so it's all around pretty nice. The ABXY buttons, however, while it is a bit nuanced, they're like 3, maybe 4 steps back. It's crazy. At 120 grams, they still take a significant amount of force to press. They still have quite a bit of travel distance for clicky buttons, and this time, unfortunately, Razer's trademark stability is out the fucking window. It was contacted by the US government and has not been heard from since. Have you seen it? GameSir controllers, for example, are probably some of the worst offenders. They're far, far worse. But compared to older Razer controllers, there's a very clear difference. And the old Razer controllers, ABXY buttons in particular, were already in desperate need of an update. You've kind of reached the point where the only real place you can go with this upgrade is up. That's rock bottom, by the way. I don't know why I'm telling you guys. You're Razer. All of the obnoxious tactile greatness we're talking about today means jack shit and fuck all if it can't even do 35 miles an hour. A mechanical controller needs to be fast, and Razer was very careful about their marketing with the 1000 Hz polling rate thing. I have not currently seen 1 millisecond anywhere in their marketing like I have with a lot of these other controllers. And they exclusively say the 1000 hertz tournament mode thing is for PC only to avoid the mess Gamester had with the G7 SE. So even though, unlike, FlyDigi, they don't have any direct claims for us to debunk, we're still going to do some testing using the GPDL tester. It's a very simple test. It essentially presses a button or moves a stick, measures the response time. That is an ungodly oversimplification, by the way. It does this action 2,000 times to ensure accuracy. There's a bunch of information about, there's links. We're going to dive right in with the slowest configuration you can have for the V3 Pro, which unsurprisingly is the 2.4 gigahertz. And if you do a manual overclock using something like HID USB-F, it overclocks the polling rate from 250 to 500 hertz on the 2.4 gigahertz, but it does not actually change the response time at all. So regardless of the polling rate, you're getting 30 milliseconds on the sticks with the 2.4 gigahertz, and 10 milliseconds on the buttons. The wired is a bit different. The fastest configuration you can have would obviously be the 1000 hertz setting, where the 10 millisecond response time for the buttons is moved to the sticks, and the buttons now get a 4 millisecond response time. This response time is actually perfectly adequate. It's not that bad at all. It feels pretty nice. Just keep in mind, if you want your turbos to spool up properly, you have to plug the controller in and use the fastest wired settings. All in all, the V3 Pro seems to have a response time on par with other 2.4 gigahertz controllers, including the Vader 4 Pro I just reviewed. 4 out of 5 or something. I don't know. I don't do numbers like that. Fuck numerical systems. The manual has some instructions for shortcuts you can use to either, change things like RGB settings, volume control, haptic strength, stuff like that. More settings can be found in the software, which is worth having a laugh at, because if I don't, I may actually break something. Now, the app is available on Xbox and PC. It's called the Razer Controller Setup for Xbox. You can get it on the Microsoft Store. I did a tutorial for it forever ago with the Wolverine Ultimate, and spoiler alert, you would never fucking guess. It is basically the same. First up, you can only remap M1 through M6, this being the extra inputs. You cannot remap the rest of the controller like you can with many other Pro controllers. You also only get 2 RGB options, which is pretty gay for Razer, who has like the best RGB of anybody. Well, I suppose since there aren't that many RGB options, it's kind of anti-gay, and I don't know if I could say that. Anyways, we get haptic adjustments or vibration strength. It's basically vibration. There's power saving settings for like timed inactivity things, and I saved the best for last. Razer stopped dicking around and finally gave us some advanced software settings for the thumbsticks. Take a wild guess. Did they fuck that one up? Yeah. Top Gear, top tip. Prevent Double Deadzones says it's trying to help you. Do not listen to it. According to my GPDL testing, it doubles the thumbstick response time, and I sure as hell knew it did something because my accuracy was awful with it. It doesn't prevent double jack shit fuck all. Turn it off, keep it off. There are also circularity settings. This and the normal dead zone settings for the thumbsticks have no verifiable effect on response time, but when tampered with, I would compare the settings to feeling like bad sex. Dead zones are obviously only really necessary if you have stick drift, and the circularity setting simply just gives me a bunch of room to talk shit. Do you remember these cockeyed graphs I showed you at the beginning of the video? Well, that was the standard circularity option in the software, and as you can see here, it's incredibly asymmetric and does not feel that good in game. The circular option here is a bit better. It gives us the standard 0-0 we're used to looking at, which isn't as bad as some other controllers, but still does limit the range of motion slightly, so neither of these options are that great, and there were no fixes for either of them in the software update, or the firmware update, I should say, that Razer dropped to help fix the stick drift issues. Full thumbstick summary. Turn off Prevent Double Dead Zones to prevent it from doubling your response time. The thumbstick dead zone settings should be off unless you have stick drift. And for now, you should probably use the circular setting, as it is a lot more symmetric currently than the standard option. Although if there was a firmware update that fixed the standard option, well, preferably both, but I'd probably still use the standard option if it was fixed, but circular for now. Oh my fucking God, I forgot about the sensitivity clutch. The V3 Pro, it's a bit of a big back at 300 grams. In fact, it was, until my teardown and I had to rip a bunch of shit out of it, it was the most dead-on 300 gram measurement I've ever seen. This also isn't that heavy. The previous controllers were like 20-ish grams lighter, and the Elite Series 2, for example, is like 45 pounds heavier. Razer did also address the size of these devices very subtly, but they did. You can kind of see that the shape is just a little more tapered, but it's still probably not ideal for smaller handed people. It's still pretty, it's still pretty fat. Very DualSense vibe-ish. But to be 100% honest with you guys, I'm stalling because the most painful part of this video is next. It's the Now I want you guys to really take a gander at what you see here, because this may be the only V3 Pro teardown, the only full teardown on the entirety of the internet, because a full teardown of this controller requires a willingness to cut through, slash, and break a $200 controller willingly, and I don't encourage anyone to do that. But doing so reveals a labyrinth of cables and boards, a couple of Minecraft haptic motors, and a host of green kill switches and the 4 rear buttons, ABXY buttons, and triggers. In a slightly frustrating turn of events, there is a bit of a dilemma with the switches too. I'm not going to go over all of it. There's a flop, god damn it. Here is the problem with the kill switches. I'm not going to go over this right now because this is going to be a full video. In short, the green kill switches are either rated for 3 million clicks like Razer says, or 5 million clicks like everybody else says. Now, some more real bad news with the ABXY buttons and the D-pad is the dampening, which these companies really just cannot get away from. I've described the experience multiple times before. The click is cool, the sound is nice, but performance is really hindered. Lots and lots of travel distance. The D-pad gets more of a pass as it's not as heavily affected and, in my opinion, doesn't suffer as bad as the ABXY buttons. It uses these taller 6x6 tack switches and the other 6x6 tack switches I was talking about earlier that are a little bit shorter and have a much different click. Those are used in the bumpers and the extra bumpers on the front M1 and M2. The 6x6 tack switches in general are a bit of a mystery. I cannot find exact ones. Most are rated for under, 300,000 clicks generally. On the higher end, 500,000 clicks. I don't know. Also, the fucking clicky home button. Why do these companies put effort into the stupidest things? Which okay, it's probably a leftover from this. Not sure why they did that, but I did go through the trouble of doing the teardown to expose Razer's gimmick to you guys, so be sure to subscribe. There is a lot more to this teardown than just the switches though. For instance, the battery. 2100 milliamp hour, massive cock. Literally twice what you see in most Pro controllers from third-party companies. Also, do you guys want to hear the funniest fact about this entire teardown? Do you see the case over Hall effect sticks? Do you see how they still have the caps on top of them? Yeah, there's a plastic piece in between that cap and the thumbstick, and you would need to remove that cap in order to do a full teardown of the controller. As far as I'm aware, you cannot do this in any way without damaging something, so I did.
No, you cannot do this.
I scorched the shit out of an X-Acto knife and sliced through a bunch of plastic to make sure I could fit the board out. That way I could do a full teardown. I almost tore the thumbsticks off, broke the controller in a couple of ways, and cut my hand in the teardown. I do not recommend it. This is my job. Like, being genuine for a second, I spent 7 hours putting this thing back together and taking it apart for testing, for things that I had forgotten to put back in. Do not replicate my confidence with this controller. This is a bad one. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a cheat code here. Razer's previous controllers, at least according to my teardowns, use very similar, by very similar, I mean identical hardware to previous devices, meaning a prediction for reliability is actually pretty feasible. The V2 Chroma for Xbox and V2 Pro for PlayStation, both of which have a lot of hardware similarities, had quite a few issues of their own, so they can give us some ideas. So this video was actually recorded at the end of August, actually around the same time the V3 Pro came out, but I've been a loser for the past 2 months, which of course turned out fucking amazing for you guys. Not so much for myself, but luckily now we have reliability reports for both the V3 Pro and Tournament Edition, and it is literally exactly as I thought it was. I had a whole 4-minute segment written about all of the issues the previous V2 Chroma and V2 Pro controllers had, and how they'd likely end up being on the V3 controllers because the internals are so similar, so I apologize for not getting this video out sooner. Stick drift was an issue for a couple of people after the firmware update, but that was a very minor issue I only saw a couple of reports of on like Amazon and Best Buy. An issue I did precisely predict about these controllers though was the connection issues, both the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, which has been caught disconnecting from quite a few different customers, and then the USB-C wired connection is also problematic, but with Razer controllers, it is most of the time the cables. And what's crazy is the cables really suck because the majority of the negative reviews talk about this issue. Despite the software remaining unchanged for 4 decades, it's still buggier than Florida in July. The old Razer controllers also misled people into thinking that the Synapse software was what you fucking used for the controllers. That's not true. You use this Razer controller setup for Xbox, which you can find on the Microsoft Store and the Xbox Store. And they fucking put that in the new manual, and people are still sending their controllers back because they think there's no app for this on PC. Yes, there fucking is. Stop sending back your controller. I will concede that the print depicting the software is rather small. Quick tip, the software is always mentioned at the end of manuals for most controllers, and there's usually only a sentence or two telling you where to fucking download it. Read the manual.
Manual? Semi-automatic? Oh, these are the weapons.
For the tournament edition specifically, we had a lot of phantom or ghost input complaints, and this was mainly just with the tournament edition. This was probably the most prevalent issue outside of the connection issues, obviously, that the TE had. Basically, both versions of this issue would arise. One where you would press a button and it would press other buttons on the controller that weren't mapped to that button. And people are also saying buttons will press without them touching the controller at all, which is very strange. Of course, I could take up all of your time talking shit about these controllers that I kind of actually enjoy, but I'm really just gonna sum this up and keep this in mind for the rest of the video because it was recorded before all of this. These controllers are now confirmed to be incredibly unreliable, and while I am giving a little bit of a spoiler right now, in the conclusion, I do say the TE might be the better option, but this reliability report kind of strengthens that, because if you're gonna pay that much for a controller, why not cut the risk in half and have a very identical experience, just wired? But obviously you guys are about to go watch that now. Anyways, if you have a V3 Pro, just keep it intact. Don't drop it. Luckily for such cases, there is a 1-year warranty. Now, I know you guys have been here a minute, but this is the final piece to our Wolverine V3 Pro puzzle. So let's put this fucking puzzle together and see what the hell is up. I could make this segment into a comparison video, but I have spiders to review. So first up, let's get all of Razer's Xbox controllers in a room and see which one walks out. The old ass Wolverine Ultimate over here is like 60 to 80 bucks on Amazon regularly. It's cheap as hell, but it doesn't have half of the refinements or features that any of these newer controllers do. It does have 6 total buttons, the 2 iconic front buttons and the 4 rear buttons that are in a much worse configuration with membrane switches. It also has very short, lightly clicky ABXY buttons that are pretty nice, 2 swappable D-pads, some swappable 6, ALPS potentiometer thumbsticks, some mushy bumpers, and analog trigger stops that have a little bit of travel, and a wired connection. That used a disgusting USB type. But it is, depending on what time you get it at, it could be really cheap. So I will leave those Amazon links in the description, and I'll probably do a Redux review on that controller sometime. It doesn't really match up that well with either the V2 or V3 controllers though. The V2, or more precisely the Wolverine V2 Chroma, since they dicked up the naming scheme, this is really close to the V3 but misses many key features that improve the experience heavily. The anti-stick drift Hall effect sticks, the 1000 Hz polling rate, which I do have to do response time testing for the other devices, but we'll see about that one. But also the new and improved button layout and the new and improved triggers are also missing from the V2 Chroma. It really only shares the clicky bumpers, D-pad, front buttons, and the front buttons on the older V2 controllers, like I said, they're clickier because they use different switches, but also less reliable. The 4 rear buttons on the V2 controllers also follow the Wolverine. They're much worse by comparison. The sticks in the older controllers use ALPS potentiometer based sticks, but you know, let's be 100% honest here. The Hall effect sticks feel kinda shitty dog. They're kinda dog shit. Also, get drifty without that firmware update, mate. The V2 Chroma has trigger stops that are analog. It also has a wired connection, and because it's trapped in the wired realm, that means it fights the V3 Tournament Edition, which kicks that in the face. And while it is PlayStation, for those wondering, the V2 Pro over here is very similar to this. It just has a touchpad, the 2 different front buttons, and clicky triggers that, while nice, are not nearly as refined as the V3. Those feel way better. And I'll have more polling rate response time testing between all of these devices to get more comparisons to say maybe this is the fastest or that's the fastest in upcoming projects featuring larger scale comparisons. In summary, Razer did a decent job upgrading their controllers, but if we're honest, the original, well, not the original, but the first Wolverine in an older Razer controller, that has the best thumbsticks. The Wolverine Ultimate, hilariously, I know. The V3 Pro, though, has the best triggers, the best rear buttons, the best bumpers, front buttons. The ABXY buttons are kind of shit. And again, I can't say it's the fastest, so you'll have to keep up with future response time testing. Now, compared to controllers outside of the Razer lineup, it is worth noting for PC users specifically, my recent review of the Vader 4 Pro is very noteworthy because it also has 6 extra buttons. Granted, the extra 2 are on the faceplate instead of the front, but it's got clicky everything, adjustable clicky triggers, adjustable tension, a bunch of other shit. 2.4 gigahertz, very similar response time. It's a little bit smaller, so I do believe people would be very interested in that for PC specifically, as it is $80, but it doesn't have the same rear button layout that this does. This is way better. Also, the 2 front buttons are way better than the 2 extra faceplate buttons, so I will give it credit. This might be better for the real deal, like Ultra Sweats, but the accuracy on those thumbsticks and everything is really, really nice. Xbox controllers are really where it matters for these comparisons though, so Elite Series 2 might need its own comparison video, to be 100% honest. But I'd probably take this, unless you were trying to spend under 150, in which case get a core and an accessory pack third party. The Victrix Pro BFG for Xbox is literal trefoil. Like, it's a literal trefoil. Do not buy that fuck shit over this. Thrustmaster controllers are a reliability nightmare. The Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra is so fucking bad, I took down my review and plan to make an update project on that. So at the end of the day, the V3 Pro competes, and I very much like it. 2 things really worry me, though, and I think you guys will probably agree. First up, the reliability of past controllers cause for concern. Secondly, and this is also really important, the V3 Pro is good, but the V3 Tournament Edition is far better for the money, because it's the same thing, just wired. You can buy 2 Tournament Editions for the same price as 1 Pro, and you aren't getting another entire Tournament Edition worth of features. You're basically paying $100 to have RGB, a rubber grip, a case with a couple of accessories, and wireless connectivity added on top of your already existing Tournament Edition. And I really don't want to be rude, because I do enjoy the controller, and I think Razer did an okay job with the upgrade, but I cannot help but feel like it was a bit of a plan to send the reviewers who got sent devices like myself the V3 Tournament Edition without its sister device, because you guys knew it was going to be better in terms of price to performance. Maybe the only way the V3 Pro sells well is if it's released 3 or 4 weeks before the Tournament Edition. So here is the opinion of the undisputed controller dude. The TE seems like the better deal on paper. The wireless on the Pro model feels nice. Its response time isn't too bad, but I would not pay an extra $100 for it personally. Unless, in your case, you do really want this controller and the wireless is a necessity. And I would not harp on anyone for getting this thing. Like I said, it's a great controller. Like 160 to 180 bucks. It would have been a little more like acceptable. I mean, when you type in Ultimate Xbox controller to an AI generator, this is pretty close to what you'd get. If you're interested in purchasing one, I'll have links and everything in the description below. Razer, I'd like to thank you guys again for sending this out. Please keep sending a young man your fucking shit. Anyways, I'd like to say a humongous thank you to the performance on the last video. I haven't had a video bang like that in quite some time, and you guys are fucking awesome. I quite literally had the audacity to tear down, break, melt, cut, and all around just intentionally damage a $200 toy I likely couldn't get a replacement for your entertainment and informative, and your fuck me. What I was gonna say is you should subscribe. Try a free vCuda subscription. Thanks again to Razer for sending out this device. If you guys are really upset about me defiling the controller, tough tits, I love you guys. It was brutal, but you came to the right man. There is not a man alive can make a controller review like me. No man alive can beat me. You know what we're gonna do? We're doing one of 2 outros. It's either gonna be the one I really want, or it's gonna be the one I used when I was still a Fortnite YouTuber. You guys will figure it out. I gotta make a new one sometime, but I gotta go work on this video.